I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Prime Minister Netanyahu lands in hot water with the White House. The trial begins for Palestinian teenager Ahed Tamimi, and it looks like the Backstreet Boys are finally going to quit playing games with my heart. They're coming to the Holy Land. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu may have just landed himself in a bit of hot water with U.S. President Donald Trump. Hours after Netanyahu made the bombshell announcement that Israel and the U.S. were discussing a plan to officially annex Jewish settlements in the West Bank, the White House strongly denied his claim, prompting Netanyahu himself to immediately backtrack on his remarks. Many are calling this quick-draw reversal denial the first real tiff between Netanyahu and Trump, whose relationship until now has been quite strong. But the White House's statement that the Israeli leader's claims were purely false is an unusual on-the-record remark for the Trump administration, which could mean there's a little trouble in paradise. This comes less than 48 hours after Trump himself confessed that he wasn't necessarily sure that Israel is trying to make peace with the Palestinians, specifically referring to Israel's settlements as a complicated obstacle. The White House's new budget for 2019 has, however, added an extra $200 million in aid to Israel for the coming years. So maybe this little spat is just a bump on the road. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has just met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow to deliver a major request. The Palestinians have asked Russia to diminish the United States' role in the peace process and potentially step up to fill the void. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with more. Hi, Aaron.
Hello. Thank you very much, Natasha. And yeah, between Trump's decision in December to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, as well as his more recent decision to slash over half of the foreign aid that the United States is paying to UNRWA, relations between Washington and Ramallah have just taken a nosedive. Now, it seems like Abbas has been going to almost everybody to seek a new replacement for the United States in peace talks, right? Yeah, I mean, he has. He's gone to the UN, to the EU, to private, individual countries like Putin in Russia and Modi in India and China. India, yeah. Exactly, yeah. He's gone to basically everywhere to try and cut out the United States from some sort of deal. He doesn't see them as any part in
right. It's a viable or unbiased partner for peace, per se. Will Putin end up filling this void, in your opinion?
So it's tough to answer that. The truth is that it's very unclear because Putin, it's in his interest to insert himself more and more and more into the Middle East, and we see him doing that elsewhere. But he hasn't committed to anything, and there's no guarantee that Israel would agree to Putin having a larger role either. So we'll just have to wait.
All right. Well, let's wait and see what happens after this meeting. All right. The trial of 17-year-old Ahed Tamimi begins today. Tamimi is the Palestinian teen who was filmed slapping an IDF soldier near her home in the West Bank last December, all in an apparent attempt to elicit a violent response from him on tape. Tamimi and a relative were arrested on charges of assaulting a soldier, and as we speak, her trial is now being heard. This case has ignited fierce debate not just in Israel but abroad as well. Footage of the incident showed Tamimi, 16 at the time, slapping an IDF soldier and yelling at him. When that video went viral, some Israelis praised the troops for obeying protocol and not responding with force, while others say the soldiers actually humiliated Israel by not fighting back. Tamimi was arrested during an overnight raid following the incident. She later testified that she acted the way she did because she witnessed the same soldier shoot her cousin in the head with a rubber bullet mere hours earlier. Gory pictures of her cousin, apparently gruesomely injured in the head, soon surfaced. This controversial case has sparked global interest, with rights groups and American celebrities demanding the teen's release. Though the judge did initially rule that Tamimi posed no actual danger, she was ultimately kept in jail until her trial today.
لا نتوقع عدل أمام هذه المحكمة. هم يحاولوا تعظيم التهمة من أجل تعظيم العقوبة، وذلك أنهم محكومين برأي عام إسرائيلي يميني متطرف من قياداته تضغط باتجاه حكم عالي، وهم يريدون كسر النموذج حتى لا يكون قدوة أمام المجتمع الفلسطيني وبالتالي هاي عوامل تشير أنه مو من الممكن أن يكون الحكم.
The Tamimi family is no stranger to controversy, nor even charges like these. Some have accused Tamimi's father of grooming his children for violent resistance against Israel. Though some point out that the family, whose village is divided by both Area B and Area C of the West Bank, has endured some of the strictest policies of the occupation for nearly their entire lives. Whatever the verdict, the debate is likely to continue for months to come. Here now with a closer review of the advantages and disadvantages of trying to annex more of the West Bank is Dr. Martin Sherman, the executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. So, Dr. Sherman, I'd like to begin with what it means to annex more of the West Bank. Can you explain that to those of our viewers who don't really understand?
Well, basically to extend Israeli sovereignty to Judea and Samaria. At the moment, Gaza has been taken out of the equation. To extend Israeli sovereignty to Judea and Samaria means basically that Israel becomes the official supreme authority in the area, and that it's going to apply everything that applies within the pre-67 borders of Israel to the area across the 1967 borders. So it'll basically become an integral part of Israel.
Now, what are the advantages to annexing? Why annex? And then again,
well,
why not?
You know, I've always been a strong advocate not only of annexing the cities and portions, but of the entire area. You know, I believe that the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs over the Holy Land is a very simple conflict. That doesn't mean to say it's an easy conflict to solve, because the difficulty is rooted in the simple brutality. It's either them or us. And I believe that for Israel to endure as the nation state of the Jewish people, one of the conditions, one of at least two conditions, is that it must impose its sovereignty over the entire area from the river to the sea.
Well, many people are against this. Why? Why is that the case?
Why are they against it, or why am I for it?
Why are they against it?
I have no idea. Because one of the problems is the demographic problem, what's called the demographic problem, the presence of a large recalcitrant Muslim population within that area. I think that can be dealt with. For over a decade, I've been advocating incentivized immigration to reduce the Arab presence there. But there's certainly no way that Israel could exist for a long period of time if there was a hostile sovereignty on the high grounds overlooking the coastal plain, which contains 80%.
Well, these are problems that are obviously going to exist. So, you know, how would Israel essentially be able to overcome these problems?
Well, you know, it depends which problem you're talking about. If you're talking about the diplomatic problem, I think Israel has been very lax in presenting its case to the world. I've been advocating spending 1% of the state budget on public diplomacy, which would be well over $1 billion. With $1 billion, you can change a lot of minds and present your case forcefully. The other case is what to do with the Arab presence there. And as I say, I believe that we have to relate to the Arab collective across the Green Line as they relate to themselves, as an implacable enemy, and treat them as an enemy, but offer non-belligerent Palestinians an alternative of finding a better, more secure and prosperous life elsewhere in a third-party country. I believe that's the only way that Israel can fulfill the two imperatives. The geographic imperative.
Well, the question here is, so, I mean, would the Palestinians take this deal? Why would they take this deal? Because
the question is, what's the alternative? The alternative is either living under continued so-called occupation or living under the even more repressive and dysfunctional Palestinian. Look what's happening in Gaza. If you want the ultimate indictment of the two-state theory, look at Gaza. Now, in Gaza at the moment, Israel, in order to protect itself from the repercussions of its policy of withdrawing, has to build a 50-kilometer wall 40 meters deep. Now, imagine if you had to replicate that effort in Judea and Samaria with not a 50-kilometer border, but a 500-kilometer border with a wall going 40 meters, which over 100 feet into the ground. Relinquishing sovereignty over Judea and Samaria is just not a viable option for Israel.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Sherman.
Thank you.
There are still around 8,000 Jews living in Ethiopia, and now the Israeli government has just ruled that 1,000 of them will be allowed to immigrate to Israel in 2018. The announcement comes just a month after another 1,300 Ethiopian Jews made their way to Israel. The Israeli government is planning to make sure that the rest of Ethiopia's Jewish population will be able to settle in Israel by 2020, just 2 years away. Most of the Ethiopians waiting to immigrate are known as the Falash Mura, the name given to those of the Beta Israel community in Ethiopia who were forced to convert to Christianity by missionaries in the 19th and 20th centuries. That means they're not covered by the law of return, which allows anyone with a Jewish grandparent to obtain citizenship and move to Israel. This is why they must all officially convert to Judaism when they land in the country. Israel is currently home to over 140,000 Ethiopian Jews, most of which arrived in daring rescue missions during the 1980s and 1990s, when Ethiopia's political stability was deteriorating and becoming unsafe. Ethiopian activist groups claim that today there are groups within the government that do not want more Ethiopians to settle in Israel because they don't consider them to be Jewish. The Israeli government refutes this, saying budgetary concerns have limited the amount of Ethiopian Jews that can arrive in Israel each year. The government is taking dead aim on the BDS boycott of Israel with a new international effort. ILTV's Yael Shir brings us to the floor of the 2018 Legal Network Initiative to explain just how.
Israel is hosting an international conference to figure out ways to take on the BDS movement. There are over 200 experts from 24 countries. The conference was sponsored by the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, the Israeli Bar Association, and the International Legal Forum. One of the speakers, Gilad Erdan, said that the purpose of the conference is to bring together those who will fight back, move from defense to offense, defend justice, and pursue those who advance in an ideology of hate, anti-Semitism, and discrimination. One of the main issues that arose at the conference was the connection between the BDS movement and anti-Semitism. While the leaders of the BDS go out of their way to explain they are not anti-Semites, reality shows something different. Just recently, ADL President Jonathan Greenblatt attacked pro-Palestinian activist Linda Sarsour, who participated in a panel on anti-Semitism. He said, quote, "Having Linda Sarsour and head of JVP leading a panel on anti-Semitism is like Oscar Mayer leading a panel on vegetarianism. These panelists know the issue, but unfortunately from perspective of fomenting it rather than fighting it." Despite the denials of the leader of the boycott movement, European leaders think otherwise. Frankfurt Mayor Uwe Becker told the conference attendees that rhetoric used by the BDS organizations is the same rhetoric used by the Nazis in Germany 7 decades ago.
Well, when BDS comes up and is putting pressure on store owners not to sell Israeli products, when they put the pressure not to buy and to boycott Israel products, that is the same what the Nazis said when they said don't buy from Jews. It's different words, but the same language.
A member of the House of Representatives in South Carolina, Alan Clemens, told ILTV that 24 states have passed legislation against the BDS and would not tolerate anti-Semitic activity. Many leaders of the BDS movement claim that their campaign is not anti-Semitic. Do you agree with these statements?
The basis of the BDS campaign, in my opinion, is anti-Semitism. And in South Carolina and in the 23 other states that have passed anti-BDS laws, we are of the same opinion, and we are not going to tolerate anti-Semitism in our states.
What would you say to anyone who believes the BDS movement is about justice for Palestinians?
The Palestinians that are behind the BDS movement are doing so to bring into question the legitimacy of Israel.
Attorney Pascal Markovich is also working with legal means to thwart the activity of the BDS by means of anti-discrimination laws in France.
For me, the BDS campaign is not only anti-Zionist, but it's anti-Semitic. We have a lot of examples of anti-Semitic behaviors, which were the consequences of boycott actions.
One of the organizers of the conference, Yifas Segal of the International Law Forum, told ILTV that change will come.
We see that the legal arena, let's say, has really been instrumental in changing things around. We see victories all over the world. We see changes in legislation. Basically, that's the idea, to empower the entire network and really take it to the next level.
The conference was signed by a joint statement by the jurists with the obligation to attack with any legal means any initiative to boycott the State of Israel.
The Yemenite children's affair is arguably one of the biggest unresolved mysteries in Israel, but it looks like we could be getting some big answers very shortly. The government has just reached a deal with the families of allegedly kidnapped Yemenite children to greenlight the opening of alleged graves so that DNA evidence can be gathered. Now we're just waiting on the final Knesset vote. A bit of backstory here. This scandal dates back all the way to the 1950s when the country was still getting on its feet. Over 1,000 migrant or immigrant families, mostly from Yemen, claim that when they brought their infants for a checkup in the hospital or were giving birth, their children disappeared. Doctors allegedly told them that their children had inexplicably died and had already been buried. Over 1,000 Yemenite families have reported nearly identical stories like this. And this is why many have long suspected their infants had actually been abducted and given to Ashkenazi families who had just lost children in the Holocaust. Multiple government investigations have concluded that these infants did in fact die, but suspicions of a cover-up have only strengthened in recent years after dozens of now adult children have been reunited with long-lost Yemenite families after being told they died as infants. Now, one such reunion happened earlier this month. Knesset member Nurit Koren has spearheaded a new government probe into the affair, one that would issue a court order to open the alleged graves of Yemenite children. The families will now be able to have their own doctors present if and when the graves are finally opened. If the DNA collected inside does not match that of the family, it could be evidence of a massive conspiracy that's nearly as old as the state of Israel. All right, if you've never had the chance to read a novel by the famed Israeli author David Grossman, guys, it's time to get on it. Grossman is already considered one of the world's most important modern Israeli writers of all time. And now he's just been awarded one of Israel's biggest writing awards, the Israel Prize for Literature. Not too shabby. The Israeli star writer has a career spanning 35 years, and he's known for several literary masterpieces, like To the End of the Land, A Horse Walks into a Bar, and Falling Out of Time. Today, Grossman ranks among the top writers on the planet, and his works have been adapted into dozens of languages all over the world. Last year, he won the coveted Man Booker International Prize, but here's maybe the best example of just what an impact his novels have. Even though some of the left-leaning author's work is intensely critical of the Israeli government, even right-wing politicians can't stop gushing about his books. Education Minister Naftali Bennett was the one who broke the good news to Grossman personally. The lawmaker noted that although they don't see eye to eye on politics, Grossman is nothing short of one of the most exciting, profound, and influential voices in Israeli literature. On that note, Israel has just handed out a Wolf Prize, also known as the Israeli Nobel Prize, to another artistic genius, former Beatle Paul McCartney. The boy from Liverpool is required to come collect his award personally in Israel to accept. Ironically, that would be just around the time the other remaining Fab Four member, Ringo Starr, is set to rock Tel Aviv. The Beatles were supposed to perform in Israel at the height of Beatles mania in 1965, but alas, it never came to be. Well, now 53 years later, wouldn't it be nice if they could just come together? When you're in the hospital, you're exposed more than ever to dangerous bacteria, which is why hospital cleanliness is a must. Joining us now with a new product that will help keep medical facilities sparkling is Dr. Aharon Gedkin, the co-founder of Nanotextile. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for interviewing.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what Nanotextile does. What product have you created?
Nanotextile is a company that was founded on 2015 following a European community project that I was coordinating. And in this project, we are developing a coating technique that coats textile in such a way with nanoparticles that are killing bacteria. Therefore, if in the hospital, the bed sheets, the pillow covers, the pajamas, everything will be antibacterial, the number of people that will die will be reduced tremendously.
Right, so this has the potential to save many, many lives, and I'm imagining there are people who want clothes made out of this or coated with this material, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So what is the cost of these types of textiles?
Well, it's very cheap. There is no other companies that can compete with the price of nanotextile in producing these coated fabrics, which are very special because the coating technique is very special, and the outcomes, the results are such that the fabric that was coated was washed 65 times in hospital washing machine. That's not the washing machine in your house that works at 30 or 40. It works at 92 degrees centigrade. And after these 65 washing cycles, the material, the antibacterial coating was still on the fabric.
That's incredible. All right, so I understand that this was scaled up during a $12 million Euro R&D project, right? What was tested during that project?
Well, first of all, the washing. Secondly, it was placed in a hospital. The coated fabrics, coated cotton, for example, and 22 patients were dressed with pajamas that were antibacterial, were sleeping on bed sheets with pillow covers. Everything was coated, and in parallel, there was 17 or 18 patients that slept on regular beds. And the outcome was such that there was a distinct difference between the two populations.
Beautiful.
Less contaminated with bacteria were the people that slept on our fabrics.
Interesting. Well, I can already imagine so many different ways we can use this, right? In restaurants, public spaces, beyond just hospitals.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Thank you for joining us. All right. As if a couple of Beatles in Israel isn't exciting enough, one of the best boy bands of all time will officially quit playing games with our hearts this April. That's right. Nick, Kevin, AJ, Brian, and Howie of the Backstreet Boys are headed to the Holy Land, and they're scheduled for a springtime concert in Rishon LeZion that's bound to be larger than life.
Hi, the Backstreet Boys. Shalom, Mazel Tov, everyone out there in Israel. We cannot wait to see you guys April 22nd in Live Park. We miss all of our fans out there in Israel. We cannot wait to get back here to put on the best show ever for you guys. Coming back. See you soon.
So exciting. All right. Only in a world like this would we be so lucky. The Backstreet Boys brought down the house in 3 back-to-back sold-out shows back in 2015, but clearly the 90s heartthrobs are just incomplete without another trip to Israel. Tickets are going up for sale literally as we speak, courtesy of Ticketmaster Israel. So if you want it that way, you better snag tickets fast, because contrary to their promise to never break your heart, that's exactly what happened to a lot of fans when Backstreet was back. All right. A few years. This is so many puns here. All right. Those tickets sold out faster than you can demand someone to show you the shape of my heart. And that is the end of this corny item. But it was worth it, right, my friends? All right, on to our next story. If you're not already following the famous satirical Twitter account Fake Mossad, then now might be the time to start. It looks like the comical account is launching an online merchandise store with some really cheeky gear. Okay, so what is Fake Mossad, you ask? Well, the famous and obviously fake Twitter account for the Israeli spy agency spiraled into fame in 2017. It all started when pro-Palestinian activist Linda Sarsour took to Twitter to ask if anyone knew where her text messages had disappeared. That's when the Fake Mossad account took charge, responding with a simple yes. The internet quickly went crazy, and since then the account has garnered over 50,000 Twitter followers. Its founder, Sean Enney, is a Canadian expat living in central Israel, and he's become a mini celebrity of sorts in the Jewish social media world. It looks like that has helped him open up a merchandise store on his website where he's selling clothing items with his satirical lines on them. So if you've ever wanted to become a spy without all of the real-life baggage, go and grab yourself some Mossad swagger. And now it's time for our Hebrew word of the day. The world's favorite, definitely not the real Mossad, just launched an online store with all kinds of silly spy swag. So today's word is meragel, which is how you say a spy in Hebrew. So here's the thing about a meragel, or a spy. You'll never actually know if you're talking to one. Yes, a meragel could be literally anyone. That hot dog guy on the corner, perfect cover for a meragel. That nice lady with the red shoes, maybe she's high-heeling her nights as a meragelet, or a lady spy. Remember, not every meragel looks like James Bond. Sometimes the best mergalim, or spies, are lurking right behind you. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. The winter heat wave looks to be staying. Expect a drop in temperatures as rain showers will continue throughout the evening. The low tonight should be about 53 or 12 degrees Celsius, and the high tomorrow will be around 65 or 18 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.52 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at ILTV.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.